Again, the number to dial, 888-ASK-HANK. First up, James in Tampa, Florida, listening on Sirius XM 131. Hi, James.
Hey, how you doing, Hank?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah, we enjoy your show, my wife and I. My question is, I have a lot of different friends, Christian friends, that believe heavily in this rapture, and we've had several debates on it, and it's not something that I believe in. I'm just trying to get your view on it. They're trying to, it seems like they're walking around with their heads in the clouds, like we're not going to have to go through any troubles or trials. We're just going to be taken up to heaven, and that's the end of it. And I don't, from what I read from the Bible, it just doesn't translate that way. And anytime I hear anybody explain that, try to explain it, their equation just doesn't add up to me. Jesus comes back once, as far as I'm concerned. He doesn't come back twice. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I'm just trying to get your view on it. You seem to know a lot.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. And what I've said oftentimes is, number one, there is no biblical basis for the pre-tribulational rapture. And I am also somewhat nonplussed by the fact that there are great and glorious passages that deal directly with the resurrection that are now being used for the idea of a pre-tribulational rapture. What you said about the coming of Jesus Christ bears repeating. I mean, what did Jesus Christ himself said? Do not be amazed at this. The time is coming when all who are in the graves will come out. Some will rise to live, and some will rise to be eternally condemned. There's no thought whatsoever in that passage that there's going to be a secret coming, and then 7 years later, there's going to be a second coming. That's something that's imposed on the biblical passage. It's not something that is exegeted or drawn out of the biblical passage. And I think added to that is the fact that there's no biblical basis for a coming 7-year tribulation during which a vast majority of Jews are going to die. That, of course, is not to suggest that Jews have not suffered tribulation in the past. Obviously, the great tribulation of the Old Testament was under Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the Old Testament Antichrist. And Jesus actually pointed back to that suffering to point forward to what would happen in a great tribulation in which Jerusalem and the temple would be not just desolated, but manifestly destroyed in such a way that you couldn't even see that a city had existed there. So this was going to be utter destruction that took place. And so, once again, the idea now that you can take that tribulation in the Old Testament and the one I just described in the New, by the lips of Jesus Christ himself, and then project it into the 21st century and say, very, very soon, after we get all the Jews herded in the Holy Land, they themselves will die in the greatest Holocaust in the history of humanity. This is something that is imposed as a paradigm on the biblical text. And I don't think it's particularly helpful. I mean, it's the idea that the Jews get to be slaughtered and we get to be raptured just before the Jews are slaughtered. And yet that is precisely what is being communicated. If you look at the Left Behind series, for example, and the books that Tim LaHaye has written in that regard, and I only mention him because while alive, he was the most popular person on the planet espousing this view, and even after his death, he's the most popular person on the planet who has espoused that view, which continues on in the present. There's simply no warrant for, again, a massive Holocaust of Jews in the Holy Land just prior to the rapture of Christians who get to spend that tribulation time in heaven. And there's one other thing that I would say is there's no warrant whatsoever for a rebuilt temple and reinstituted temple sacrifices, which is also part of the schema. The idea that there's going to be a new temple and that Jesus is going to preside over that temple. By the way, this is a fourth temple, not even a third temple, the millennial temple. There's going to be a tribulation temple, millennial temple, and this idea. But in the fourth temple, Jesus is going to preside over a temple with renewed temple sacrifices, and they will atone for sin. All of this, again, is taking a paradigm that was popularized in the 19th century, and it is imposing it on the Word of God. I don't think that you can find, without the paradigm in place to begin with, any warrant for this whatsoever in the biblical text.